Doc Thompson on Talk Radio 1270. Coming up tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we will be pinch hitting for the Glenn Beck radio program, and I hope you'll check that out. Coming up, we'll still be here tomorrow afternoon and Friday afternoon for our regular show. And then coming up Friday at about noon on our Facebook page, we'll make some big announcements about our future plans. I get an interesting story here that covers property rights and wasted tax dollars and government-supported propaganda. This is a really odd story that's been happening for a while, and we got some new information. Jim Scarantino joins me now from newmexico.watchdog.org. How are you, sir?
Doc, how you doing?
It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jim and I are acquainted with each other from years ago, and I worked in New Mexico. But, Jim, your website, you've been following this story, and this is bizarre. And before we dive into it, I got to remind people, these are tax dollars that potentially, either directly or indirectly, could be anybody's, because you're talking about a public broadcasting station which gets federal dollars as well.
Right. This is public money that funds the local PBS affiliate here in New Mexico, which is called KNME TV. And it's kind of funny. It's called the K-Enemy. It's a really bad choice of letters.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into this and start from the beginning and find out. This is based on water rights.
Okay. In the arid Southwest, water is worth more than gold. And there's been a raging controversy over what to do with the water rights of Native American tribes. The Navajo tribe asserted a claim to so much water in the northwestern part of the state that it would have shut down half the cities in New Mexico. The battle raged for years and years. I mean, was it a legitimate claim, et cetera, et cetera? So finally, in the mid-1990s, there was in 2005, there was a settlement reached with the Navajo, where they were going to yield a lot of their claims. The cities were happy with it. A lot of ranchers weren't. Some Navajos weren't. Some downstream users weren't. It was a big controversy. But the administration of former Democratic Governor Bill Richardson got behind this, and they decided they needed some help to get this through Congress, because they needed $800 million of our dollars to fund infrastructure to buy off the Navajo.
So the $800 million, that was part of the deal, though, right? Where the Navajos got some water rights and everybody else got some, but the Navajo gave up the rest of theirs, half of them, for that $800 million
to buy off the Navajo claims, and build some infrastructure. So it had to come from Congress, and Congress wasn't too anxious to shell out this money, so they turned to their government propaganda arm in New Mexico, which is KNME TV, the PBS station. It is a state agency here in New Mexico.
PBS is a state, it's part of a state agency?
They are all state employees. All the producers, all the broadcasters, all the people back in the studio get a state paycheck. They are part of the state retirement fund, since they're employees of the University of New Mexico, which is a state subdivision. So the state engineer contacted PBS, KNME, and said, we'd like to do a program that will help us, literally, he said right up front, help us motivate your viewers to call Congress to help us in our lobbying effort. The Navajo wanted a say in the production, so that together they came up with $30,000 to fund the production. A contract was signed, just like, to produce this thing and give the clients final approval. What's interesting is that nobody really knew this is the story that was going on. It was advertised as a quote-unquote news documentary, but what it was an infomercial for the settlement. The Navajo objected to any viewpoints being included in the production that they did not want the viewers to get. They said, we want to leave viewers so motivated they'll pick up the phone and call Congress. We don't want any dissenting voices. Even though this had been a lawsuit with a lot of public agencies, different cities, ranchers going on for decades, the Navajo succeeded in excluding, and the state did too, in excluding from the PBS broadcast any viewpoints they did not want the PBS viewers to see.
Now, Jim, this sounds very odd because, see, I've been told over and over again when I object to PBS because I see that as simply, my tax dollar is going to promote my competition, and they're certainly not unbiased. Anytime I'm told that, they say, well, Doc, PBS is truly unbiased, and they put out information. They're not subjected to the propaganda from corporate America or anything like that. But this really seems like just propaganda. They
sold their journalistic soul for a lousy 30,000 pieces of silver and produced a piece that I've spoken with members of Congress who said it motivated them. They were persuaded. I mean, it was a real heart-tugging piece, about how this was needed, how it was evil for us not to support this, on and on and on. And not one question was raised about how much is this going to cost, who's really going to benefit, is anybody going to be hurt by it, are there any better alternatives? One side of the story was presented as gospel truth. So let's lay this out. You have a whole lot of people in the Southwest. You have, like you said, the ranchers, just the people, the taxpayers, everybody, all these different communities. Everybody has a vested, that need it for their sewer systems, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, so you have all of these people who have a very powerful interest in this. It's going to affect everybody in that scenario. And in particular, the deal that was done is going to benefit the Navajo Nation as well as some other people. And they essentially go to the local PBS station that is provided by funding through the state. It's a government agency, as you said.
And federal dollars.
And that government agency that even takes my tax dollars here, you're right, produced a piece of propaganda for them.
And then they've continued to lie about it for the past 5 years when they've been questioned by journalists. They've now been hauled into court by the dissenters, the people who oppose this. They filed a public records request. We've got a very strong Inspection of Public Records Act here in New Mexico, great standard of open government that all public records are available for the public to see. As I said, the PBS affiliate, KNME, is a state agency. So everything, the producer's notes, the draft scripts, the correspondence, et cetera, are public records. Well, this PBS station has held itself out as a champion of open government. They have sponsored seminars for citizens, who face a brick wall in getting access to public records. Well, PBS has since 2007 been using tax dollars to erect a brick wall. They refused to produce records. They got sued, so the state hired a private attorney, private law firm, $150 an hour on down. They've been litigating this thing since 2007. They are facing $100 a day civil penalties for not turning over the records. They continued to lose in court. They took it all the way up to the New Mexico Supreme Court on the sort of hyper-technicality that makes people despise lawyers, but lawyers love, because all that nonsense is translated into dollars in their bank account. And still, the PBS affiliate is continuing to rack up legal fees and fines that the taxpayers and the contributors to PBS are going to have to pay, because this money is going to have to come out of the general revenue. So when they make that pitch for the money we need to stay on air, well, some of that money is going to pay in civil fines.
But you get a free tote bag, Jim.
Right. You get some cookbooks.
Jim Scarantino.
I'm talking Lawrence Welk videos.
Yeah, I'm talking to Jim Scarantino from newmexico.watchdog.org about all of our tax dollars, your property rights, government-supported propaganda. This is the nonsense, Jim, that frustrates me so much. As most people know, listen to the show. My personal life, I'm very conservative on the air. I'm pretty libertarian about stuff. And I call out Republicans, Democrats, anybody that is not consistent with open, free government, personal responsibility, personal property, personal freedoms, all of these things. So I don't care who it is. How could these people who always talk about freedom of, or open government rather, and talk about the people having power to see what they're up to, support this kind of nonsense?
Well, the PBS hasn't necessarily advertised what they've been up to, which is why I've stuck with the story. There were some initial inquiries made by journalists about what this was, and the PBS station lied. They said, we retained editorial control, which was absolutely false, because I've gotten hold of some of the internal records that show that they changed their scripts when their clients objected to it. I think reporting on PBS is very important because it is a news organ that carries this aura that they are the standard. They are the reasonable ones. They're the most informed. Theirs is the right path. And having been on this station, I was on the public affairs show for years and years and years. I know it's absolutely untrue. The talk shows are slanted. Their selection of what they talk about is slanted. And what I found is one of the most egregious examples where they simply sold their soul for clients they thought that were politically correct.
I'm frustrated because you're right. That's the standard they want to put out there. And when you're dealing with any bias in the news, we hear about people being biased. I'm not sure how many people that are not in broadcasting or journalism understand the many forms that bias can take place. You pointed out some of them. It can be just not reporting all the facts, slanting things a certain way, not giving all the information. But it's also the stories you choose to cover.
Right. I think that's the big one. What gets discussed on PBS? This lawsuit is not discussed on PBS. I can guarantee you none of my reporting is being discussed. Does PBS discuss the controversy about whether PBS should get public funding on its station? That is a major news issue. So, I've never seen an honest debate on PBS of opposing viewpoints as to whether PBS should continue to get taxpayer funding over the years.
And that is so important right now. We got the president flying back to D.C. to talk about the fiscal cliff. Everybody recognizes the amount of money we overspend, whether you're conservative or liberal. You recognize that we cannot continue the way we are, even if you want the money to go to places you believe. Guess what? This is a serious discussion right now. This is a serious topic. And you're right. They continue that, of course, we've got to continue to fund public broadcasting. Of course, we should do all these things, which I've brought up over and over for years, Jim. We've got the internet now. Anything that people did not have access to years ago because they lived in a very rural or remote place, you have access to.
Well, take a look at what you see on PBS on a typical weekend. You got a bunch of cooking shows. I love them. I love Lydia Maticchio Bastianic, that woman with the bad hair.
Oh, yeah.
I love her. She reminds me of my grandmother. But she's a multimillionaire now because of PBS. And her show could just as easily be on Home and Gardens television. You've got car shows. You got these shows of these people going around the rummage sales. What is it, the junk? The junk company?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that on public television? Like, we really need that?
Antiques Roadshow, that's it.
There's been a huge decline in what public television really is about. Tavis Smiley's on there. God bless him. He's an entertaining guy, but he has definitely got his point of view. He presents one side of the political spectrum, and yet, if you're going to be public, where's the other side of the political spectrum? It is not present on PBS.
The other thing, too, you mentioned how much money she makes. You look at how many of these shows that could be self-funded because they have a brand that people have purchased, like Sesame Street and all those characters, right?
Sesame Street, they don't need PBS. I mean, it's a profitable organization as it is, and any other network would snap them up. I did another story on the general manager of the PBS affiliate here in New Mexico. Having lived here, you know what a poor state we are.
Yeah.
We are down there on the bottom when it comes to income and education, and up on top with all our social ills. The average income for a family of four in New Mexico is in the low $40,000, wow. Family of four. The general manager of the PBS affiliate here, who goes on air and makes these pleas, help us keep Sesame Street on the air. Without your funding, we won't be able to bring you such and such program. She makes a base salary of $165,000 a year.
Nice.
That's more than the city manager of Albuquerque. She supervises something like 40 employees. 90% of the programming, as you know, is canned programming.
Yeah.
Out of Boston and Portland, Rick Steeds, they just rebroadcast this stuff. They produce very little of their own. She's got a bunch of student interns. All the money comes in from the federal government. She's making more than the city manager of Albuquerque.
See, I could not do that. I don't care if I'm the president or whoever. I could not go on and beg people for money in a situation like this or cry poor knowing that I was spending this amount of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's like no conscience with it.
Well, it's a strange culture. I think they feel they're superior to all of the media. They feel they're superior to, all the television stations, radio stations, and I think there's this just huge amount of hypocrisy as to what's going on. I mean, it's a very closed culture in PBS across the country. I think when they include a conservative viewpoint, they view it as an anthropological expedition into worlds unknown, outside their closed little circles. I don't think it's going to go away, Doc. with the re-election of Barack Obama, PBS, there'll be some funding, in his budget proposal once again. They'll get some money, somehow.
Right.
I think the thing for people to demand is, if it's going to be public television, really make it public. Why aren't you on PBS, Doc? Why not you on there? Tavis Smiley's on there, representing a far left sort of racialized viewpoint. Well, fine. That's part of the public sphere. Well, how about another viewpoint? And I think it's time for conservatives to get on the public advisory boards, to agitate at their state universities, for state legislators to demand that these university affiliates of PBS start including a broader viewpoint, instead of just letting these folks, have their party and party with our money.
Before I let you go, Jim, what's the update? Did somebody just get fired because of this or resign?
No, the general manager has resigned.
Okay. Of the PBS TV station.
Yeah, the general manager of the New Mexico PBS affiliate, after my series of reporting. She's also being sued by a whistleblower. The former number 2 who raised all the money was raising the whistle about public funds being diverted, and she got fired, so she's suing them. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting came in and audited the station, and this woman, Polly Anderson is her name, announced her resignation last week. She's moving to a brand new PBS station in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, come on.
Yep, but the Orlando Sentinel's on it, and right before we went on air, I was interviewed by the Orlando Sentinel about my reporting here in New Mexico.
I expect she'll do just fine. I expect she'll be wonderful.
Did you know that the head of PBS makes $650,000 a year? The head of NPR makes $1.2 million a year. These people in the upper echelons, the elite of the public broadcasting community, are the one percenters.
Jay, what do you need to pay him for that much? I mean, if you're saying wrong or right, we're paying a CEO $6 million or $10 million or whatever it is, the theory, whether they're really worth it or not, is that without them, they would not be profitable and go away. Well, what would happen to PBS if these people weren't there? Would they just roll up their tents and go away?
Nah, somebody else, the assistant general manager, the people that really are committed to public broadcasting would step up and do the job, and do a very good job, and do it for a lot less.
Wow.
Because there's people who love it. There's people who really do believe in this. As you know, you love radio.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you had the opportunity to do an NPR, why not?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, I'm not going to change who I am, but absolutely I'd go and do something like that. I mean, I don't care where I'm broadcasting.
You've got a little culture. I think it's a little elitist culture, and they take care of themselves. They've got their political connections, and one hand washes another. And yet, the producers, I would notice, we published the entire salary list of the PBS affiliate here. You have the general manager who makes $165,000, which is $70,000 more than the next person. And the people that work the 15, 16-hour days are making in the 30s and 40s. Those people would gladly step up and run the station, I bet, for $75,000.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, facing a job loss, I'd do that for.
But when you give money to PBS, your listeners up there, and you come on, and you call in, I would suggest you call and ask what the general manager makes.
And I don't think most people, Jim, fault the general manager or somebody else for making a good living. But at some point, if you're making into the millions for running NPR, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think it has to be commensurate with the responsibility. Like I said, you have to recognize that most PBS broadcasting is canned. It's done in the big shops, WGBH of Boston.
Boston, yeah. They do a lot, yeah.
A lot of it's done and it just shipped around the country. And they run it. So, I just think you've got some people getting, not stinking rich, but getting wealthy off what is supposed to be an active public service.
Talking with Jim Scarantino from newmexico.watchdog.org. I'm on for Beck tomorrow morning. You may have heard me promote that. I may cover this, Jim, and play some clips of this and, get it out there for you.
Well, go right ahead. I'd really appreciate the exposure.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have some time. I think we might, though. Hey, Jim, do you mind if I take a quick call here? Are you okay with taking a call? All right. Jay in Southfield, did you have a comment or a question for Jim Scarantino?
Yeah, I was. Well, hold on, I'm getting a little feed. Okay, now it's gone.
Yes, sir.
I'm sitting here. I'm laughing because, like I told Boz, he's in a damn state that gets $5 to $6 back for every dollar they pay in federal taxes. So he's complaining about PBS when we're paying PBS his salary and everybody else's salary down there. And I'm
not
sorry.
getting any public dollars.
This got anything to do with the Navajos or black folks? Yeah, you know what? 400 years of oppression, we deserve a little something back. So I don't know if your complaint is because they've gotten some water rights that they probably lost years back or whatever, but your state doesn't pay taxes anyway, so you shouldn't even be complaining about PBS.
The issue is not the Navajo. The issue is the journalistic integrity of the public broadcasting system. That's
okay.
The story. I did not get into the merits of the settlement. Of course, the Navajos have legitimate claims. Both sides did in all this. But what went wrong here is that what is supposed to be a journalistic enterprise sold itself to do government propaganda.
Okay. Still, once again...
Well, hang on 1 second, Jay. Think about this, though. You said you're right. New Mexico takes in more in federal dollars than they pay. But that's the reason this is so important. They're taking our federal tax dollars for this propaganda machine.
I understand that. But that PBS, is he talking about just the PBS budget in New Mexico or the PBS budget nationwide? Because
for what?
I know the one nationwide is not even a drop in the bucket of money we spend.
It's $500 million. That's nothing to sneeze at.
We waste more than that. And Doc, I call Doc every week when we complain about nickels and dimes. I'm going to complain about the $10 and $20 bills, like borrowing money for China for tax cuts that we can't afford. So we can get rid of that stuff before we get rid of PBS.
But Jay, why don't we get rid of all of it when we're facing a $17 trillion deficit? Debt.
I understand that.
$500 million here, $500 million there, a couple billion pretty quickly.
It really does. I mean, but see, there's the difference, Jim. And I appreciate the call, Jay. The difference is I count all of this stuff. I don't care if it's nickels and dimes. I don't care if it's if it's big dollars. I count all of it. If it's not necessary, if it's being used the wrong way, it should all count. And people need to be outraged about it equally.
It's this culture of waste that's been going on in our system for far too long. We're spending money on things we don't need to. And yeah, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket right now, the $500 million, but we're paying that to go to a propaganda machine right now.
Well, and there's this attitude, too, that it's only $500 million. Whoa. That's real money. I'm sorry. Even $1 million shouldn't be wasted.
Yeah, Jim, let me ask you, could you do something with $500 million? Could you find a way to spend that?
Nah. But even $1 million, how many taxpayers have to work how hard to produce enough to pay taxes that'll add up to $1 million, and then people spend it like it's nothing?
Well, and even if you're somebody that you're like, well, it's not that amount of money. Think about all the other places it could go. Would you rather have, propaganda created with tax dollars, or would you rather have somebody being fed? If you're somebody that says we need a huge social safety net and whatever, there's a lot of other ways that we could and should spend the money as a priority rather than propaganda.
You got it. You got it.
All right, Jim Scarantino from NewMexico.watchdog.org. I appreciate it, Jim.
Happy holidays to you guys.
You too. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you coming on with us. He's a pretty sharp guy there. He's an attorney, right?
He is, yes.
Jim's an attorney.
He's a recovering attorney, I should say.
He's a recovering attorney. This is a fascinating story. We're going to put some links up. We can put them up at, you know what? We'll put the audio from the interview at DocThompson.com so people can check that out. And I do want to at least mention this if we can tomorrow, because it's a pretty powerful story. We're up for Beck and get the national audio audience in on it. It's there's so many things wrong with it. First of all, from a PBS standpoint, when you cry and tell us that PBS is under assault and they need more money, or even if you're somebody that supports PBS, do you really want your tax dollars going to produce what is propaganda from the people that pretend that they are true journalists? Is that really what you want? Why wouldn't you want them to ask difficult questions from all sides? And the fact that it's propaganda to begin with. Why would you support any government dollars being used for propaganda purposes? Even if it's something that you support. There's the difference. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to be honest, and I'm looking for consistency. Even things I like, even things I want, I would not support propaganda. I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. I think all of the craziness that's happened over the last couple of weeks because of a tragedy in Connecticut is nutty. All of the laws that they're going to propose and all the craziness that'll come right after the first of the year, I'll be opposed to. But if somebody came to me and said, Doc, would you help us produce some audio or a video presentation with tax dollars that's one-sided, just so we can go ahead and promote the Second Amendment? We'll skew this thing. I would say not just no, but hell no, I'm not going to support that. Of course I'm not going to do it. Bring the information, bring the facts. First, I wouldn't even support the tax dollars one way or the other being produced for this stuff, let alone the propaganda side of it. By the way, the area you're talking about in New Mexico is in the northwestern part of the state. It actually bleeds over a little bit into Colorado just to the north, but it butts right up against the Four Corners region. New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. But it does even get into southern Colorado, too. So you're talking about the Navajo Nation. It's pretty wild stuff there. All right, we're going to get a quick break in. Coming back at 5:05 right after the news. It's the fiscal cliff and the economy. Good news about the fiscal cliff.
Oh, we got some good news finally.
Yes, some fantastic news. The president is flying back to D.C.
Well, why is that good news?
Well, the president's going to fly back to talk about this fiscal cliff and the mounting deficit. He will spend hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars to fly back to D.C. to deal with the
So he had to cut the vacation early, so with the First Lady and kids are going to come too?
They're still back there, too.
They're still in Hawaii.
They're still there. So he'll fly back to talk about our fiscal troubles.
Meanwhile, the family will also have to fly back.
And that'll cost us more money.
Yes.
So good news, the president's on his way back to D.C.
Doc Thompson.